Hi, Sean. Why are most comedy sequels not very good in your opinion? Examples like Dumb and Dumber 2, Zoolander 2, Anchorman 2, Caddyshack 2. Well, I think that I think the most obvious reason that applies to most of the examples that you gave is that comedy is very timely. There's trends in comedy. There's things that as a culture we find amusing. And so what was so funny in 1994 isn't necessarily super funny in 2014. And what plays really funny when someone does it when they're 30 doesn't play the same when they're 50. Classic example of this, Adam Sandler, so much of what made him hilarious in the late 90s was just like this irreverent man-child energy where he's like angry and he's shouting and has a kid that he's treating like a pet. And when the kid wets the bed, he just throws a newspaper on top of it. And when he was young enough, that played really funny because it was like, just like, yeah, this man-child, he's not ready to raise a kid yet. And then he has a character arc and it's sweet and sentimental by the end of it. But if you do that same joke when he's 50, it just comes off like who's this abusive, angry man that's yelling at people and abusing children? There's certain things you can get away with when you're young enough that play so differently when you're older. And I think some of that plays into it. I think some of it is also just the freshness of you have this idea and you're just in the groove. And someone like a Ben Stiller who just had a really good run, and when he has an idea that he's really into, delivered some absolute comedy classics. Zoolander being one of them, that there's just so many of these ideas that are just so funny. And then it makes money or becomes a cult classic or whatever. People are like, you should do another one. You should do another one. Another one would be great. And you do a sequel for that reason rather than inspiration. And time passes. And so you're trying, as a now 50-year-old, you're trying to recapture the energy that you had when you were a 30-year-old, and you're not the same person. And your inspiration isn't the same thing that it was originally. And so you just kind of get this lifeless thing. It's, I think, with with a lot of other genres that are more kind of story-based, doing a sequel, you just need to find that next story that kind of works. And with comedy, the comedy is the first piece. I think there is just a little bit more of an inspiration side to it, where stories, there's a little bit more room to have a team of people cracking the story or different input. Comedy, I like what Ben Stiller needs to be able to do, or Will Ferrell, or any of these guys need to be able to do to be funny and really buy into the role and find that stuff. It's inspiration. And what you're able to do when you're young isn't the same thing that you can do when you're older. So even like for me, as I've been a public speaker since I was 21. I started talking in churches in my early 20s, and now 20 years later, about 20 years now, and now I'm in my early 40s, and I just think back of so many things I used to do and things I would just like impromptu be able to say and be funny because I wasn't afraid of consequences. I wasn't thinking of the ramifications. There's so many different things that went into it that just like my instinctually I was funnier before. And now I stop and think about it a lot more before I say things. I think about the ramifications, and like when you have kids, and there's all these different things you think differently about the world, and so it makes it harder. Like even like little examples of this isn't a comedy, but like Steven Spielberg, when he did the 20-year re-release of E.T., he took the guns out of it. And it seems like such a crazy idea. Like, why would you take the guns out of E.T.? It's not like there's a shootout, or it's not like they're shooting E.T., but he was just older, and he's like, there shouldn't be guns in E.T. Because he just viewed the world differently. That same thinking happens to every comedian that's so funny when they're in their 20s and 30s, and then they're in their 50s, and they're a different person. They're in a different place of life trying to recapture the magic, and it just doesn't work. It's not the same because they're not the same. They have to find a new funny thing. And sometimes if you're able to like go all along and do the sequels, and maybe it works, but trying to recapture the magic of years past. I just don't think that works. And then the final one, a big one that is currently the big issue, is that comedy is extraordinarily difficult to do since in the modern era, because comedy is about being transgressive, crossing lines, being inappropriate. And we're in an era where the goal line, or the boundary, keeps moving. The goalpost keeps moving. What offends people, our sensitivities, keeps moving. Some of that's good. Some of it's maybe not so good. But we have a lot more cultural sensitivity about things. And you're trying to do comedy, you're trying to go up to the line, but the line keeps moving. So what today is right on that place where it's funny, a month from now the line might move, in which case you go over the cliff, not because you went over the cliff, but because the cliff moved. And so everyone's afraid to do comedies now. So there's not a lot of comedies coming out. Even one final anecdote before I kind of move on from this one. But like a few weeks back when Cody Leach came to town, we went to go to Joe Rogan's comedy club. I'd never thought to go there, even though I live here in Austin. It's a comedy club here in town, but I don't do things like that. My wife would never want to go do that. So we went with our buddy Rudy to the comedy club, and they legitimately took your phone as you came in, and your phone was locked in a bag. Some of that is because it's comedians working out their sets, and these are guys that are going to have Netflix specials, including Joe Rogan or whatever, so they don't want to get their stuff getting out before that. But also, the whole time they're cracking jokes about, like, I'm glad you guys aren't recording this because I'd get canceled, and then they would say something that would be offensive. Exactly. Like, there's this sense of people are worried about getting canceled for making a joke. That they're not stating a belief, they're just making an observation that juxtaposes something that is offensive in a way that gets a laugh out of people. And we're in an era where that isn't being taken as well as it should, as it used to. Some of that's good, some of that is not good, but that's the world that we live in, and comedy is tricky. Most of these clips are pulled from my Patreon live streams. I do about 6 live streams every single month. For $2 per month, $20 per year, you can get access to all the exclusive videos and live streams. For $5 per month, you get your name on my end card. At the top tier, you get a 30-minute video chat with me each month. The link down below in the description has more information.